Live. Now, after a 9-month break, millions of learners will be heading back to classrooms, albeit with concerns of whether social distancing can be adequately adhered to and whether there are enough masks. Well, our very own Wahiga Mwaura spoke to the Education Cabinet Secretary, Professor George Magoha, on the preparations they've laid out as a ministry and whether the learners are indeed safe. Come tomorrow. Take a look.
Professor Magoha, thank you so much for speaking with Citizen TV. Starting tomorrow, all learning institutions across the country are expected to reopen, bearing in mind many of them have not been open for at least 8 months. Help us understand this, Professor. What has changed in a majority of these institutions for you to be confident enough as CS Education that you can give the go-ahead for that to happen?
Thank you very much, Wahiga. Let me start by correcting you. All schools in the Republic of Kenya were opened for 3 million children over the last 3 months. In fact, they closed on 23rd of December. I think they were opened on 12th of October. They closed on 23rd of December, and they are coming back tomorrow. What is it that has changed? A lot has changed, Wahiga, because since that time, the government of the Republic of Kenya, through the initiative of His Excellency the President, got an economic stimulus package for 1.9 billion Kenya shilling. And this was originally supposed to produce 250,000 desks for primary and secondary schools, children. But we negotiated a price which was very, very competitive, and we are able to give over 600,000 desks. That process is continuing. I think we have delivered more than 60% of those desks. The delivery is continuing, and that has boosted our situation in schools. In terms of getting prepared for the masks, you remember we said all children had to be masked. For the small population that opened of 3 million, our policy was then to encourage the parents to buy the masks, but the very indigent poor children, we provided masks for them, about 1 million. When we open now for the rest, the difference in time has allowed us to get more masks, working with other collaborators and the Ministry of Health. So we now are in good state with the 7.5 million masks, which we are going to use judiciously for the children in slums and those children who cannot afford, whose parents cannot afford the masks. And so much has changed, unless you are specific.
I actually want to get specific right now. The first thing you said was if there are any challenges, government will deal with it on a sort of a rolling basis. Do you foresee, you're in the business of foreseeing as well, not just implementing, do you foresee any challenges as schools reopen tomorrow?
Let me tell you that the greatest elephant in the room is going to be we shall not achieve social distancing for a substantial number of schools. In schools in the arid and semi-arid areas, like in the northeastern province, where there is a very small population of children, they will achieve social distancing. In the central and western and, the rift part of this country, that is a pipe dream. It shall not be achieved. And we have told our teachers, first of all, to use every open space. For example, if there are dining halls, which are used for eating, they can be used as classrooms during class times. If there is an auditorium that is special for other things, it can be used as a classroom. And finally, what you don't want to hear most, if the weather is permitting, if there are trees and the weather is conducive, outside classrooms, as from the doctor's perspective, are the best, because the trees remove carbon dioxide from the air and add oxygen. And oxygen is the treatment for COVID.
Help me understand. You say it's a pipe dream. Is it a pipe dream from a resource perspective? Is it a pipe dream because 8 months was not sufficient to set up sufficient structures?
Let me first of all congratulate His Excellency the President for having given us an order earlier in the year to get 100% transition. Most people thought that 100% transition only meant that we take children who are in standard 8 to Form 1. But what it actually meant was that we sweep most of the children that we could get, like the girl child who had given birth 3 years earlier. We got so many of them back to school. So our schools are at 150%. In short, they are overcrowded. And His Excellency the President was the wise one, because he had said even if children learn under a tree, they must go to school. Nobody knew about COVID at that time. So we complied. And I want to make it very clear to you that we have over 43,000 schools, most of which are overcrowded. There is no government in this world who can have money to double the infrastructure, which has taken tens of years to build. So it is.
Is that a fair statement to make? We have seen governments in other parts of the world doing near miracles.
You cannot compare Kenya to Rwanda, and you shall not compare.
I haven't named, but you.
No, I'm naming it for you. You cannot compare Kenya to Rwanda. I am not a politician. I am just a cabinet secretary, and I can't tell you what is impossible to do. The government of the Republic of Kenya provides infrastructure money every year, to the extent that in the previous year, we had over 2.1 billion shillings for the secondary sector and 300 million shillings. We also have the CDF money, which is administered by the MPs, about 100 million shillings per year. Now, if you are to audit that, you will find that a substantial amount of that money actually goes to infrastructure development. Even as I speak to you, we are building classrooms, we are building dorms, and if it may interest you to know, as a result of the recent climatic changes, schools were swept away, some were flooded. The same infrastructure money is now being used to rebuild those schools. So it is highly unfair for the media or any other person to imagine that the government should do more than it should do. It is already doing more than enough as far as infrastructure is concerned.
And I asked you that question because, and you referenced the media reports we've seen from Rwanda, where they say that 23,000 facilities have been built during this time, and you seemed to take exception to that.
I haven't taken exception. I'm just saying that Rwanda is like a small, it's like a province. It's like a region in Kenya. Rwanda is like a region. Ask yourself, how many schools does Rwanda have? Our student population alone is bigger than the Rwandan population, in case you don't know.
I'm aware.
So if you are aware, you can't. If you are comparing oranges, compare the oranges with oranges. Mm-hmm. Because, for example, we were given 8.2 billion in a syndicate between the government of Kenya and World Bank for infrastructure. It has gone through all the procurement issues. And now, the building is going to start taking place. I don't know how many thousand classrooms and labs it will do, but it is a step in the right direction. Just to show you why Kenya is not Rwanda, this 1.9 billion desks, the over 623,000 desks we are doing, we have had to select just a few schools. We have gone to a sub-county and said, in each sub-county we can only take 15 schools, and yet some sub-counties have up to 60 to 80 schools. That is the difference between Kenya and Rwanda. So when you look at the impact of the desks, it is important because we chose the schools that deserved them. But we could not, if we wanted to do for every school, perhaps we would have used about 6 billion.
You said don't compare Kenya with its East African neighbor, but some would say then who do we compare Kenya with, if we should at all, when the CS can actually stand and say, learners, some of you might have to prepare to learn under trees. But do you understand why your comment caused that sort of reaction? In a Kenya that is digital, technological, for a man of your standing to make such a comment, can you see why the uproar?
No, I can't see, because you see, I have a very simple mind, and I don't have another life. When I tell you something, I really mean it. Because as a surgeon, I have given everything I have to this ministry. It is one of the most difficult ministries. I've advised His Excellency the President without prejudice, and I think I wouldn't be here telling you that it is unfair to expect him to do more than what he is doing. Like now, the government has stopped everything else to ensure that the school is funded by next week. And I can't tell you, it is privileged information that I cannot give you, but there are many significant things which would have been done next week. They've been shut down because of how important this education sector is important for the president. And I also want to tell you that when I started visiting the slums, it was the wisdom of the president himself. I had forgotten about the slums. When we were giving the scholarships, we thought that the arid and semi-arid areas were the ones where the poor people were. He called me and said, now, what about the urban slums? So I went to that one in Nyeri, I went to the one in Thika, I went to Kisumu, and then I went to some in Nairobi, and I really found poverty there.
You say that it would be a pipe dream to consider, sort of sorting social distancing in the short time that we had. If you had been given all the money you had wanted as a ministry, would you still say it would have been a pipe dream?
Well, Bwana Magoha, I want you to remember that the education sector takes the lion's share of the budget in Kenya today. And I'm talking about between 27 and 30%. So we start from there. So in order for you to ask for a similar amount for infrastructure, I don't think it would be wise. In fact, I would not encourage His Excellency the President to even think about it.
Let's talk a bit about the masks. Who is in charge of identifying who will receive these 7.5 million masks? You said, when can those students expect to receive them as they prepare for school tomorrow?
At the helm of that hierarchy is my most humble self. And you remember I have no teeth, so I don't smile. I have delegated Dr. Wangechi Gaturu, who is my Director of Quality Assurance, together with Nerea Olik, who is the Director of Secondary School, together with Mr. Kibet, who is Olik is the Director of Primary School, and Mr. Kibet is the Director of Secondary School. But the point here is, Wahiga, once they give me the lists, I visit the schools. Like yesterday, I concurred when I was at Kibera that they should be fully masked. We took them some desks yesterday and said they should be fully masked. In principle, we are masking all the children in the slums as a first point across the country. And then if there is a balance of masks, we shall then focus on schools like the one in Mwiki, which has so many children, the one in Kakamega, which has over 3,000 children, the one in Kibera again, which has over 6,000 children. So the numbers are going to count. We are not going to allow any monkey business as far as the distribution of masks are concerned. And I want to assure you that I don't deal with reports. I go to where the rubber meets the road.
Fair point, Prof. But let me ask you this. You are one man. We have 47 counties.
Yes.
Schools start tomorrow.
Yes.
Are you going to visit and assess every school that's deserving of the distribution of...
We have already done so, Bwana Magoha. You are not listening to me.
No, I am.
During the last term, we had done work before we opened. And we had mapped out so that as we opened, the masks that we got from Kenya Commercial Bank, which was about 1 million masks, was ready and available, and the children found them in schools.
So of the 7.5 million that you've raised, how many have been distributed so far? How many are still pending?
Well, what we have in our store now, because originally we had masks from UNICEF and KCB, and that was about just short of 2 million. We economically used only half. So the rest are ready and available. They are being distributed. Then my brother Kagwe, my colleague who is CS Health, has about 7 million masks. And those masks are being given to my officers. We shall first of all distribute them to the same schools that got masks before. But since now we are lucky that there may be extra, then we shall look for the congested schools first.
What happens to the child who shows up in school tomorrow and by misfortune, your masks have not reached them yet?
Every child will be masked, and if a child reaches a school that and has no mask, the child will be masked. Then we shall follow up the child, because if the child is playing pranks and the parents can buy the mask, we shall know. Because you are a Kenyan, and you know how Kenyans behave. There are many Kenyans who can afford. They would rather go and buy 2 bottles of beer and eat nyama instead of buying a mask for their children. We are being very fair here.
Okay.
That we want to help only the vulnerable as far as masking is concerned.
And I'm being fair in asking, I'm not talking about those ones, the ones who play pranks. I'm talking about a child who genuinely, the family cannot afford a mask.
Those ones we have already identified. Because, you know, when I say you're not listening, this is the second time. Last term, anytime I'm outside or my officers, I'm not just alone. When I go out like tomorrow, my officers will span the country. If you stop me and inspect my boots, you'll find something there. Do you get the point? So no child will be sent home because the child is not wearing a mask. Unless it is a political prank, because there's a lot of toxic politics as we speak now. And if people are bent on that one, I don't belong to that sector, I'm not a politician, I will not deal with it.
Is it fair to give a child 2 masks for a period of 3 months, scientifically, and you're a doctor?
I have been a doctor for 42 years.
What research guides that thinking?
Well, I've been a doctor for 42 years, thank you very much. We created the prototype. That prototype was made public, 3 layers, good material, which is not rough. If you have 2, I'm talking about the poorest child. You wear one, you wash one. And the government is not dead. We want to open schools. If you want to buy 5, that is fine, but we are giving 2. If it ends up that you only have 1 now, or if they are wearing out, we are here. That's why we are paid. We are going to be interactive, Bwana Magoha, and I want to tell you that nobody knows what is going to happen tomorrow, as far as this virus is concerned. So nobody should think that a deserving child will go to a school and will be turned away because he or she has no masks. And I also want to say that the children, as they are now at home, do you think they are wearing masks? They are safer at school because they are playing outside there without masks.
And the reason I ask this question, Prof, is because I want to understand whether you've been able to fund the schools enough to take care of costs like sanitizers, which will be a discussion we'll have for the next year at least, soap as well, etc. Where do the costs of those, which ordinarily may not have been in the budget, where will that come from?
Let me tell you one thing, Bwana Magoha. I have realized that it is not so much the amount of money you give, it is how you spend the money. And I can tell you that without blinking, that as long as the money that the government gives is used for the purpose for which it is meant, then it will be okay. Let me give you the example. I walked around and washed my hands many times with liquid soap and bar soap. And I find that people prefer liquid soap because they add a lot of water there. Because you need to get the foam in your hands to release the fatty acids. It's the fatty acids that kill the virus. The small bar soap, you turn twice and the foam is there. So as long as the money is used for the purposes that it is meant for, we have no fear. There is no money for anything else. That's it. For example, during this period, all the other activities, inter-school activities, will be suspended for a while. We want to get value for money, and my team is going to ensure that we have value for money. Let me give you the example. We may be tired, but the original cost of a desk, of the desks that we have given out, was going for 11,000, between 7 and 11,000. We are supplying desks at 3,800, and they are good quality desks. So where was the rest of the money going in the system? So we will make sure, and we have told our people in the field that this one is poison, you don't touch. It has to be used for what it is meant.
One challenge, obviously, is school fees. And in the notice that you gave today, you said that all public schools must ensure that all learners are enrolled back to school irrespective of their fee balances. At some point in some of your statements, it's almost like you've alluded to private schools having the same measure as well. And I know some private school owners have taken exception to that. They are concerned that you're interfering with the operations despite them being private institutions.
The last time I checked, I wasn't a minister for public education. The last time I checked, I was the minister for education. The last time I checked, I want to assure you that I've worked with the private schools very well. Even today, when we were consulting on issues as stakeholders, they were present. The government of the Republic of Kenya must regulate the private schools. We must ensure that before a private school is given a license, it is suitable for our children. So they are not operating in isolation somewhere. But as far as school fees is concerned, first of all, with regard to the private schools, we agree that it is a private arrangement between the child and the school. But you can't remove us from there, because when the child fails to pay fees there, for example, in primary school, and the child falls back to the public school, we must then provide space for that child in public school as per constitution. So if there is a child in private school that has fee problems, our doors are open for him. All children must be admitted first, assuming that the parents are reasonable because economic power has gone down. We have also said that we shall come in and help through the provincial administration and everybody else to ensure that if somebody is playing pranks, then we shall go for the parent, not the child. The child must be at school, fee or no fee. And if the parents can pay, they will have to pay. If a child has been married, we shall take the child from the marriage and take the child back to school. As far as helping the private schools is concerned, if it were not for the fact that the tax base has diminished substantially, the government had originally encouraged an economic stimulus package of a loan guarantee of 7 billion shillings.
Yes, what was this?
I think that one is still in the pipeline. But you see, you will ask yourself, will government fund private schools, or will the government fund public schools first, or do that one? And I think it is in the pipeline because it has gone through cabinet, and I believe after some form of stability, maybe it will come to fruition.
Prof, what lessons have you learned over the last, I want to say 8 months, I want to say 1 year, navigating, taking education stakeholders through the pandemic, through a very difficult year into 2021? What lessons have you learned?
I want to believe that it is God who brought me here at this time. It is not a job I would want to do again because it is thoroughly difficult. I have learned so much. I have learned that wealth, for example, means nothing. COVID should have brought some sanity to our people. Unfortunately, it still has not brought sanity to our people. I have seen my colleagues who offer service dying without any notice. I have seen people who have lived well losing their earning. I think the lesson to learn from COVID is that life is so simple and short that we should also remember the less fortunate people as we enjoy our own.
Even as you look over that period, any regrets on statements made, on decisions made, on even your leadership style, which...
When I was here, my leadership style has provided results. At the University of Nairobi, you see the tower. It wasn't built through smiling. No cent was stolen from there. At the Kenya National Examination Council, I stopped cheating. It wasn't done through smiling or saying, please do this. You have to be firm and fair.
Where is compassion in that? For those who say that it lacks a compassionate touch.
Very firm. I'm the most compassionate person in the world because, for example, the issue in Eldoret, those children are not my children. They belong to Eldoret people. The person who I was talking to is the person who had identified the school. And the question I asked him, which you people cut off deliberately, was, when were you last in this school? And he said, before COVID. So I was fighting for the children, and I will do the same again. Because if he's the one who identified the school, and on the ground again, which you people did not take, it looked like there were dump site material on the ground. I took those children as mine. My system works. I believe that's why the president hired me and gave me one of the most difficult ministries. Whenever he commands me to go, I will just thank him for having given me the opportunity. But I'm the most compassionate, and I don't carry things. I just make things done. People don't like me going to where the rubber meets the road. But in this country, you must do so. So I may look abrasive, but that is my portion. How did you want me to come and do what I've done elsewhere? Because at this age, you can't change me. Now, if I wronged anybody at any time, I want the person to forgive me because it's not intentional. It's just that I want to see results that I can measure. I want to see results that I have only 18 months more here if the president thinks I'm doing anything. And I would like to see that when I was here and they delivered desks for 1.7 billion, The desks were actually made and delivered.
My final question to you, Prof, is what is your message this evening to anxious parents, to teachers who are over 60 years old, they have underlying conditions, they are also anxious, and possibly to anxious students as well. They've been playing out there, but they're also worried about what tomorrow may hold.
Point number one, there is absolutely nothing to be worried about. Absolutely nothing. The government of the Republic of Kenya has done all it takes to ensure the safety of our children and teachers at school. That one you can take to the bank. As far as teachers who are 58 years and above, I think you are not in our meeting, but even though those who have been allowed to stay at home, they have gallantly said no, they are not staying at home. They are coming. And if they are properly masked, and the children are masked, they will be all right. Let us move on because COVID is here to stay. Let us wear our masks. And the last message I want to give is that when you are wearing the mask, make sure it also covers your nose. Because the majority of the people sometimes wear it and the nose is out. It should cover the nose and the mouth. And all shall be well, Bwana Maura.